According to the Widget Effect, a wide-ranging report that studies teachers' evaluation and dismissal in 4 states and 12 diverse school districts, less than 1% of teachers receive unsatisfactory ratings, even in schools where students fail to meet basic academic standards year after year. Last month, the Chicago Teachers Union began a strike, calling attention to a number of education issues. One of those issues was how teacher effectiveness is being evaluated. All teachers want a well-designed evaluation system. Today I will be discussing the topic of evaluating teacher effectiveness based on student test scores and why it is inaccurate. Student test scores, and specifically student learning, is affected by many other factors such as different levels of motivation among students, parental unemployment, parental involvement, underfunding of low-income schools, and the disparity of educational quality between impoverished schools and affluent schools. Student behavior and achievement are affected by many other factors, many factors other than teacher effectiveness. First, students have different levels of motivation, different approaches to learning, different responses to specific classroom environments and instructional practices, and different learning styles. Some students prefer visual presentations of information, while others prefer verbal explanations. Some students only rely on rote memorization of information solely to perform well on tests, while others want to gain a deeper understanding of the material by questioning it and exploring the applicability of it. Second, parental unemployment has adverse effects on a child's behavior and academic achievement. According to a study conducted by Tyler Hill, an assistant professor at the University of Chicago, a low-income child has 40% more behavioral problems in the classroom if the mom is without a job for a prolonged period. Advocates of the Children's Defense Fund say it's no surprise that financial hardship hurts school performance. Poor nutrition, a lack of health insurance, haphazard childcare instead of preschool, frequent moving, and absenteeism all contribute to the erosion of a children's well-being. Third, parental involvement significantly affects student learning. A report by the Southwest Educational Development Laboratory, which synthesized research from 51 studies over the past decade, concluded that students with involved parents, no matter their income or background, are more likely to earn higher grades and test scores, enroll in higher-level programs, attend school regularly, graduate, and go on to post-secondary education. Fourth, low-income schools are receiving less funding than high-income schools. When I say high-income schools, I mean schools that have a high proportion of students with parents that have high income. In December 2011, the U.S. Department of Education released that school districts are underfunding schools that have high proportions of low-income students. Title I districts are districts that receive federal funding to provide extra resources for the needier students. The report found that 82% of Title I districts had at least one Title I school with lower state and lower per pupil expenditures than the average of non-Title I schools at the same grade level in that district. In Chicago, for example, Title I schools with expenditures below the average of non-Title I schools had an average school poverty rate of 89%, as opposed to 45% in non-Title I schools. Yet, despite having nearly twice the poverty rate, these low-spending Title I schools in Chicago had average per pupil expenditures that were 13% below the average for non-Title I schools. Although there has been research which has concluded that more funding does not necessarily result in higher student achievement and test scores, there is no logical reason for why schools with low poverty rates should receive more funding than schools with high poverty rates. Fifth, there is a large difference in the quality of education between low-income and high-income schools. According to newly released data from the Federal Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, low-income students in California schools receive less funding, less effective teaching, less rigorous curricula, and less learning time than students in wealthy districts. Low-income students are twice as likely to be assigned teachers with high risk of absenteeism, which is defined as absent more than 10 days a year, and have lower rates of access to rigorous AP and STEM coursework such as calculus and physics than students in wealthy schools. Schools serving low-income students are more likely to have a score year cut than wealthy schools. Because student test scores are dependent on the other factors I described, test scores do not solely indicate teacher effectiveness. Therefore, it is imprecise to evaluate teacher effectiveness based on test scores.
All right, the subject's clear. Your goal is stated as a question rather than a proposition, and you want to be careful about that. You just kind of are backing into the proposition there. I know what your general point is, but you want it as a clear declarative. There is kind of a preview, but I didn't think it was very distinct, especially given that you had 5 points that you end up developing. They kind of run together there. In the body, when you're talking about those points, I think you labeled them very clearly, but it sounded to me like 2 or 3 of them were distinctly financial, and it would have made more sense to maybe collapse those into a single point rather than having 2 extra points, and then you could focus a little bit more during the presentation. I thought you did a pretty good job presenting a variety of evidence. There's a lot of testimony evidence and a few pieces of statistical information. You've got some hypothetical examples. You usually provide good source citations, although there were some places where we got studies suggest or these general conclusions, so I think you need to be a little more consistent on that. On the presentation aspect, I think you need to slow down a little bit, especially in the beginning of the speech. Your cadence in the presentation feels a little bit awkward, and when you watch the end of the speech, I think you'll notice that, because even though you had a definitive closing line, I don't think a lot of people understood that you were done, mostly because of the way that your flow was. It sounded like it came to an abrupt stop rather than putting a pause in the right spot and letting us realize this is the end and then saying what that claim is. It's just one of those, public speaking skills that you have to work on a little bit. And I wish I had more time to spend on delivery issues in here, but we don't always. Thank you.